this session, we are going to discuss the GST registration law, business process, and transaction provisions in GST. As you know, registration is the initial process in the operation of a tax law. I think you have already familiarized the terms, the threshold for limitation, registration, and who are liable to take registration under GST Act. This is the presentation plan in introduction, registration under various laws at present, purpose and advantages, features of registration, provision for new registration, process for new registration, migration of existing taxpayers to GST regime, the process of migration of existing taxpayers, provision for amendment, cancellation, and revocation of the cancellation of registration, and overview. The Joint Committee and the Empowered Committee has approved the draft provisions regarding registrations, and these details were put in public domain to elicit the feedback from the stakeholders. And after receiving many suggestions, now the draft law came into force. Legal provisions related to registrations are covered in chapter 6 from section 19 to 22. 19 deals with registration, 19A special provisions of registrations related to casual taxable person and non-resident taxable persons. Section 20 deals with amendment in registration, 21 cancellation of registration, and 22 revocation of the cancellation of registration. And section 142 deals with the provisions when the existing taxpayers are migrated to GST. And schedule 3 in the model GST Act deals with the persons who are liable to be registered. These are the very small provisions are contained in the model GST law. This shows that registration is more with procedures than law, and these procedures are yet to be finalized. The principles, resolution of dual control, that's yet to be finalized. Time-bound registration, communication, online registration, minimum physical interference, ease of doing business. Then registration under various laws at present. These central taxes and state taxes are going to be subsumed in GST. This additional excise duty and special additional duty are imposed on imports of goods into the territory of India. Now, as per 269, Article 269A, these two duties are disappeared. Additional excise duty and the special additional duty instead of these two duties, now GST is imposed on import of goods, every import of goods into the territory of India. And the state taxes like VAT, CST, entertainment tax, other than entertainment tax imposed by local bodies, LT, lottery, ET, purchase tax, state surcharges and taxes, all these are subsumed in GST. This is the statistics as on January 2016. The total number of taxpayers, central excise 2.09 lakhs, and the threshold limit for is 1.5 crores. Service tax 26.41 crores taxpayers. Threshold limit in Service Tax Act is 10 lakhs. And the VAT 66.59 taxpayers, and the threshold limit varies from 1 to 20 lakhs in different states. It's 1 lakh in Meghalaya and 20 lakhs in Delhi and 10 lakhs in most of the southern states. And for CST, for compulsory registration is required for every interstate transactions. This is the current procedure. Now, the number of taxpayers as on January 2016, service tax 26.41, central excise 4.01, and the number of taxpayers in each state. While we are rolling out to CST scenario or GST regime, all these taxpayers are automatically switch over to the GST registration. I think the number will be much lesser than that, because dealers having service tax registration will have centralized registration. The same person will have VAT registration. So, the total number of registration will not be the aggregate of this much, much lesser than that. Then registration proposed under GST regime and challenges. Liquor and petroleum are outside the purview of GST. It's continued to be governed by the local tax laws, which means in Kerala, the KGST, Kerala General States Act, KGST Act is continuing. And there will be single online registration for CGST, SGST, IGST and additional tax. The term additional tax, this slide is prepared 1 month before, and this additional tax is deleted now. There was proposal in the GST bill that 1% additional levy was proposed for manufacturing states. Now it's deleted. So this has no relevance now. So a single online registration for CGST, SGST and IGST. A unique identification number that is given to the UN bodies, and the GSTIN, that is the registration number, Goods and Service Tax Identification Number, GSTIN. Instead of TIN, now in Kerala Traders Identification Number, the GST number is termed as GSTIN, Goods and Service Tax Identification Number, from the concerned tax authorities will be given to each taxpayer for every state. Registration is state based. For existing taxpayers, the registered under various laws are now subsumed to GST. If a person having registration, multiple registration under CST, under KGST, under central excise, under service tax, all the registrations are subsumed into a single GST registration. And the taxable persons are allotted GSTN on provisional basis, and GST is based on PAN, subject to furnishing information record under GST at a later stage. This will discuss the transformation provisions in the later slides. Huge challenge to register new taxpayers if the textile, sugar and other exempted items coming under VAT, if that items becomes taxable in the GST regime, they will be the new registrants in the GST. And the central and state tax authorities will work together to register these new applicants. Here single registration for central and state, so that the operations of and data relating to the supply of goods and services can be processed in a seamless manner. Registration legally recognizes, this is the purpose and advantages of registration. It legalizes the transactions. A person is entitled to collect tax, he can claim ITC and pass on the ITC credit to other registered dealers, taxable persons. These advantages are given only when he is shown to GST. Then seamless flow of fund from sender or exporting states to IGST fund and then to importing states. Seamless flow of ITC from suppliers to recipients at national level. Here, the draft GST law is framed by studying many foreign laws, but the fund transfer from IGST to CGST, SGST and IGST, ITC credit from SGST to SGST and IGST, then from CGST to CGST and IGST, this fund transfer and cross matching of ITC is nowhere existing in the world. It is unique, it is completely made in house. That's a feature of Indian GST. Then single registration facilitates seamless flow of return, payment of tax, single challan, claiming ITC and claiming refund, etc. at a single point. Then liability for registration, schedule 3. certain specific exemptions, then exemptions are not detailed, then prerequisites of registration, types of registration, regular registration, composition, ISD, we are going to discuss in detail all these points. Then statewide registration is required for every taxpayer. In a state, he is required to take registration in a state from where the supply is made, and aggregate turnover exceeds the threshold limit. What is aggregate turnover? It is a section 2, it is defined. What is aggregate turnover? Aggregate turnover includes the aggregate value of taxable and non-taxable or exempted supplies, export of goods and services of a person having the same PAN to be computed on all India basis, underline that word, to be completed on all India basis, and excludes taxes. The tax element is excluded. So, if a person is making transaction in Tamilnadu and the same person having the same PAN making transaction in Kerala, his aggregate turnover in both these states exceeds the threshold limit of 9 lakhs, he is liable to take registration in both the states. So, the threshold for registration in northeastern states including Sikkim is 4 lakhs. Threshold for registration in other states is 9 lakhs. Northeastern states and Sikkim, their threshold limit for registration is 4 lakhs and other states for 9 lakhs. And the supply of goods after job work shall be treated as supply of goods by the principal for calculating the turnover. These are from schedule, these are taken from para 1 of schedule 3, persons who are liable to take registration. If a goods are sent for job work and receiving that goods from job worker, while receiving that supply, it is treated as a supply of the recipient. Person registered under earlier law, the existing taxpayers, shall be liable to be registered from the appointed day. Appointed day is the day from which the act comes into being. In the case of transfer of business, the transferee shall be liable to be registered from the date of transfer. In the case of the business is transferred by the order of High Court, that is in the case of companies, the transferee company shall be liable to be registered from the date on which Registrar of Companies issues certificate of incorporation. Then the threshold, there is exemptions. The general rule is that the threshold limit for taking registration is 9 lakhs and 4 lakhs for some northeastern states including Sikkim. But these persons are liable to take registration irrespective of their turnover. Person making any interstate supply. Persons making any interstate supply. Then casual taxable persons. Casual taxable person is a person who has no fixed place of business. He occasionally do business who has no fixed place of business. Persons who are required to pay tax under reverse charge. I think you have already discussed this matter in the previous session. Section 7(3) deals with reverse charge. The government will notify certain services or goods on which the recipient is liable to pay tax, that is reverse charge. He is required to take registration irrespective of the threshold limit. Then non-resident taxable person, just like casual taxable person, but the difference is non-resident taxable person is a person who has no fixed place of business in India. That is, casual taxable person who has no fixed place of business in a state. Then who supply goods and services on behalf of other persons, their agent or otherwise. Then ISD, input service distributor. I think it's a new concept to commercial tax people. ISD, input service distributor, is an office of the supplier of goods and services. Input service distributor is an office of the supplier of goods and services who receives tax invoice issued under section 23 for the input of services and who transfers that ITC in respect of that input to other dealers or persons having the same PAN. This is an transfer of ITC for other persons or for other places having the same PAN. For example, input service distributor, the SBI having its headquarters at Mumbai are engaged into a contract with or with IT companies for their main AMC annual maintenance contract of their computer or softwares. And after the work, after the services offered, the invoices are received by SBI at headquarters, but the services are rendered in their different branches in different states. So, the SBI, the headquarters SBI can distribute their ITC in respect of that bill in proportion to the services rendered in each branches. This is a mechanism for distributing ITC, credit of ITC to each places. But the one condition, both the supplier and recipient should have the same PAN. What is the rationale behind in distributing this input tax service, input tax ITC? What is the rationale behind? Accumulation of credit. If the credit is accumulated in the headquarters of the SBI, they will not have any outward supply for adjusting against output tax. That will accumulated in that area. So they cannot adjust that. At the same time, their branches in outside states will have to pay tax. So ISD, input service distributor, shall take separate registration for distributing the ITC alone. The separate registration in addition to their normal registration. Then persons who supply goods and services other than branded services through electronic e-commerce operator, goods and services supplied through e-commerce. Then aggregator who supplies services under his brand name or his trade name. Aggregator, Uber, Ola, they give services to the travelers by providing vehicles for rent. They just operate with the help of a GPS in one center and provide the vehicles as and when required. They have to take registration irrespective of their turnover. Then electronic commerce operator, Flipkart, Amazon, the other e-commerce operators, they are also liable to take registration, and other agencies or other persons notified by central government or state government on the recommendation of the GST councils. The threshold limit is not applicable. Persons who supply goods, no, it's taxable person who actually supply goods through the media e-commerce. Yes, a person who is selling through Amazon, who is liable to take registration irrespective of turnover. Okay. Then certain specific exemptions. No liability for registration if the aggregate turnover consists of goods and services not liable to tax. Exemption from registration. Central and state government may, on the recommendation of the council, specify the category of persons who may be exempted from obtaining registration. And the exemption from registration and payment of tax, certain persons are not considered as taxable persons as agriculturalist. The definition of agriculturalist, section 2, agriculturalist means a person who cultivates land personally for the purpose of agriculture. Some persons already put some concerns on the word cultivate land personally, whether the personal supervision of that person is essential here. That many concerns are going. unless if that person personally manages or cultivates land, whether he is exempted or not. These discussions are going. This personal attendance or presence is necessary. Then PAN issued under the Income Tax Act necessary not eligible for registration, and the registration is completely PAN based. When a person apply for registration, the data from the existing data from Income Tax Department related to the PAN is captured by the GSTN. And if any mismatches are done, the application will be rejected. Oh, it is completely, GST is completely based on PAN. A non-resident taxable person may be granted registration on the basis of other documents, and the documents have to be prescribed by the rules. Then types of registration: new registration and migration of existing registered taxable persons, compulsory registration and voluntary registration, single registration and multiple registration. We are going to discuss all these in next slides. Other registrations at composition levy, then ISD, TDS, unique identification UIN to special categories of persons, and casual taxable person and non-resident taxable person. Then compulsory registration. Person liable for registration under Schedule 3 is required to apply for registration. Time limit for registration is within 30 days from the date of liability to pay tax. So, if a person becomes liable to pay tax, if he has to file his application for registration within 30 days of his liability arises. Migration from existing taxpayers will be allowed other than ISD, and there are penal provisions including disallowance of ITC have been provided if not applied within a stipulated time. Then a registration to a person who fails to obtain registration. Where a person who is liable for registration and doesn't apply for registration, tax authority can proceed to register such person. Granting temporary registration granted in enforcement cases and which later on converted to PAN based registration. Here such provisions in VAT also in Kerala. Compulsory registration. And voluntary registration, facility to get voluntary registration even when the turnover is below threshold limit under the credit chain. Even if the dealer is below the threshold limit of 9 lakhs, a person can apply for registration. Single registration, one registration in each state, no concept of centralized registration. Though all the data are processed centrally, the registration is state-wise. Multiple registration, facility for separate registration for each business verticals is given to a person having multiple business verticals within a state. This is the deviation. Only one registration in one PAN in a state. Only business verticals can get more than one registration in single PAN. These business verticals are persons engaged in a similar line of business and their PAN will be the same. If they have, now the limit fixed is 35, maximum 35 registrations it can be given to business verticals in a state. Then composition levy, you have already discussed it in the previous session. Benefit to small taxpayers to minimize the compliance cost. Threshold limit is 50 lakh, ITC not allowed, and the dealer has to apply before 31st of March for opting the composition levy. Fresh application is not required in each year for remaining in the composition levy, and validity till turnover crosses threshold limit. The threshold limit is 50 lakhs and the dealer crosses the threshold limit of 50 lakhs, he is changed into regular registration. and he can opt out of the scheme and will be treated as a regular taxpayer. And the categories of person who can avail to be decided. The general principle is only one registration in one PAN in a state. They may have multiple locations in one state, so they can take maximum 35 registrations in a single PAN. Same vertical, maximum 35 registrations allowed. It is somewhat like that. Their fund is same, they are operated by same persons. So they have the facility to attain maximum 35 registrations in a single PAN.
Is it the vertical that is being registered?
Yes.
Or the branches?
No.
It's a vertical that is registered.
The vertical is registered and
so
also
the have banking and finance service. He might have some other vertical.
Yes.
So 35 such different activities can be registered given one registration.
One registration.
I think the vertical is defined by the accounting standards.
Accounting standards, it's defined.
Vertical one registration.
I mean, our separate category financial and other charges getting some.
Verticals have been defined in the chartered accounts. ISD, input service distributor, it is to distribute ITC to various units having the same PAN. It is only for services, as we explained in the case of State Bank of India. There shall be separate registration for ISD, can't be a single registration for ISD or normal business activity. This registration for ISD is in addition to the existing normal registration. Registration will be required if the credit of GST paid on services to be paid used at multiple locations are separately registered. This takes care of the problem where invoices are received at locations which is distinct from the location where services are received, as we already told. Then registration special provisions related to casual taxable persons and non-resident taxable persons. This is the definition: person who occasionally supplies goods and services where he has no fixed place of business, occasionally supply goods but who has no fixed place of business in India. Now the GST scenario, we have to treat the service sector total, that is why this is introduced, not for goods. The state separate registration application format by non-resident taxable persons, it is only valid for 90 days from the effective date, can be extended for a further period of 90 days. The one thing here noted is that in the normal registration scheme, there is no security deposit, there is no fees, no spot verification, but in the case of casual taxable person, advance tax deposit is provided, equivalent to the estimated tax liability along with the application itself. Deposit of an additional amount of tax equivalent to the estimated tax liability in the case where any extension of time is sought. So an advance tax is collected estimating the turnover of the applicant, and it is collected in advance even before granting registration in the case of casual taxable person and non-resident taxable person. And such deposit shall be credited to the electronic cash ledger and can be utilized for payment of tax. It means it will work as ITC. It will be credited to their ledger and they can get credit against the future payments. Then special number, unique identity number 2 issued to UN organizations, specialized agency of UNO, multi-financial institution and organization noted by United Nations, consulates, embassies of foreign countries and other persons notified by border commissioner. And the intention of this is to refund for refund of taxes on notified supply of goods and services following international conventions and treaties. If a UN organization makes transactions in India, they shall get unique identity number, and when they file return, they can get back their money or refund the tax paid in India. For that purpose alone, this unique identity number is provided. And a person can make an application for compulsory registration, voluntary registration, and unique identity number 1912, 19 or 193 or 196 respectively. The GSTN server will issue certificate. It is approved by both SGST and CGST authorities. Deemed to have been granted registration after a period of prescribed period, it is only 3 days. If the application is filed, both the application is forwarded to the concerned proper officers of the SGST and CGST, and if no objections are raised within 3 working days excluding the day of filing of application, it is deemed to have been granted. Then rejection of an application. Any rejection of an application by one authority shall be deemed to be rejection application by under both acts, under CGST and SGST Act. Grant of registration under one act shall deemed to be the grant of registration under both acts if the applicant has not been rejected by other authority or deficiency is not communicated. If the SGST authority raises an objection and no objection is raised by the CGST authority, and the registration is, the application, the defects in the applications are cured, the registration is granted. And after the grant of registration, the CGST authority cannot raise any objections. The grant and cancel, grant of registration and also the cancellation of the registration, in both these cases, if one authority approves it, it is treated as the other authority also approves it. The facilitation centers and tax return preparers, the application for registrations can be filed through facilitation centers or by tax return preparers. It is a new name for sales tax practitioners, STP, tax return preparers. They have to register in the respective states. Forms relating to registration, application for new registration. Facilitation center can provide facilities like uploading scanned copies of supporting documents and electronic filing of application for registration or return on for making payment. No hard copies are to be filed in the offices. Only online forwarding of, online uploading of the required copies to be approved by the application are to be approved by both by central and state authorities. Then TRP, on the basis of application, approval can be given to a person to prepare and upload various documents. This is related to the registration of TRPs in the concerned states on behalf of taxable person. And separate registrations are to be designed for CGST, for new single registration for CGST, GST and SGST for a state. Separate registration for non-resident taxable person. Separate application for amendment in registration, revocation of cancelled registration, surrender of registration, and separate application for registration as tax consultant. These are the applications available with regard to the registration process. Also, forms to be designed for allotment of UID to UN bodies, allotment of GDI government department for government department, cancellation of registration, option to avail or withdraw from compounding scheme, and issuance of shock cause notice for various reasons. These notices are yet to be drafted or prepared. New applicant can apply for registration at GSTN directly or through facilitation centers. The GSTN portal will have a back-end integration with the respective IT systems of the state and central states. The application, along with the following scanned documents, is a constitution of business, proof of possession of business, bank details, photographs, the authorized signatories, all these details are to be uploaded. Constitution of business, details of bank account, details of authorized signatory. principal place of business, the place is rented, rent agreements, ownership of the own building, ownership proof, photographs of proprietor, partners, directors. If no response from the center or state authorities within 3 common working days, excluding the day of submission of application on the portal, on the common portal, the registration is deemed to have been approved, and GSTN to generate registration certificate. No pre-spot verification. Spot verification is provided on the basis of the risk parameters provided by the GSTN itself. GSTN will verify all the server will verify all these documents, and if any risk parameters that the dealers risk parameters will be provided in the dealers module, and based on the risk parameters alone, the spot verification is needed. Risk may sometimes based on his expected turnover, a type of commodity, the evasion prone commodity, some based on some doubts on some documents filed. Okay.
So that basically arises from the objections raised at the time of the application being filed. So at what level would the objections have to be raised?
That depends. Without a spot verification, based on the online application alone, we can raise queries based on the documents alone. That can be done by both authorities.
As far as the central is concerned, the verification is taking
Sorry?
at the range level.
Hmm.
Okay. But the show cause notice has to be issued. It is basically the assistant commissioner who will have to issue the show cause notice. So now in this sequence of things, if an objection has to be raised, and if it has to be denied, the show cause notice has to be issued. So at what level will the same sequence continue?
The same sequence continue, and the person or the authority who received the application is the same authority to cancel the application. No approval from my higher authorities. But one condition, in order to grant a registration, both CGST proper officer and proper officer from SGST both have to approve. No security deposit is prescribed, only for casual taxable person and for non-resident taxable person. That's not security deposit. That's advance tax payment based on the anticipated turnover. Yes, both the authorities have to approve.
The earlier slide said that in case the GST wants to issue a notice rejecting or it issues the certificate, first then it is automatically registered under CGST also.
Also,
If that is the
I mean, if no objection is raised within 3 working days, it is deemed that there is no objection. That's why I say.
suppose CGST officer raises some objection and it is not communicated to a GST officer.
No reason for that. It is whatever objection raised by CGST's officer is communicated to the SGST also. It is automatically communicated in the server. No further approval. If this is the case, when no objection is raised within 3 common working days excluding the day of filing, then if neither of the officers have raised any objections, then after 3 working days the registration is deemed to have completed. No. It's a very risk factor as far as the registering authorities are concerned. Sorry? As and when is approved, the message will be given to the applicant through SMS and email your registration is approved and the dealer can log in and get his registration certificate from the software with a digital signature. Digital signature is a must for all registering officers. Query raised by one authority is same to be communicated to the applicant and other authority. Further action after reply to the query. Registration refused by one authority, deemed the refusal by one other. Yes. Registration within 3 common working days, excluding the day of submission of application on portal. Time period 3 plus 7 plus 7, which means 3 days to tax authority for granting registration or raising query. If any query, that has to be raised within 3 working days. Then taxpayer to file reply within 7 days and the tax authority to finalize after 7 days. So 3 plus 7 plus 7, maximum 17 days in case of an objection.
Excluding the day of filing of the.
Excluding the day of filing. If both agencies raise queries, then the time limit is the same. That both of them have to raise queries within 3 days. This is the draft rule. Some consensus have been arrived in this, not available in your book. Only one registration in one PAN in a state except for business vertical.
Does it mean that I have to centralize my accounts?
No. Business verticals
No,
have
no,
to file.
I am not talking about business verticals. I am a proprietor. Suppose I am running a hotel.
Yes.
I have hotel in each and every taluk in Kerala.
Yes.
How many registrations can I take?
Being a proprietor,
Yes.
you have one PAN
Yes.
and you can get only one registration.
That means, see,
That means you have to consolidate your accounts from
I
all branches.
indirectly saying that
Yes.
I should have a centralized accounting system.
Sure. Only one PAN, only one registration in a state.
And I seriously doubt, can the law push you to a corner and ask you that you should take centralized registration?
No. It is being a proprietor, all is the income is provided by one person, whether it is in any districts, in any areas. There is no rationale behind it.
There is a valid point behind it.
Yes.
For example, an organization like Kerala State Financial Enterprise.
KSFE is doing, you are talking about KSFE? KSFE is doing a similar line of business. They are business verticals. They can have maximum 35 registrations in any other areas.
No, and that too, I seriously doubt 35 is not possible. 0 and 1 cannot be used.
Sorry?
0 and O and 0, I and 1, they look similar. So
A proprietor have to consolidate his accounts
Yes,
under a
yes.
single
Yeah,
PAN, no doubt.
yes,
No doubt.
that's exactly what I was saying.
Approval or rejection of an application. Applicant to be informed about grant or rejection of application through email or SMS by GSTN. KSFE can take. No. They have to consolidate their accounts. If they are doing a similar line of business, they can get different registration in a single PAN. Then one of the important feature of the GSTN is the acknowledgement for application, verification of application, raising of queries, replies, receipt of reply, all are acknowledged by GSTN through SMS or email. So the applicant need not come to the office for an acknowledgement. Online acknowledgement. Approved application on grant of registration, GSTN along with login ID and temporary password to be sent to the authorized signatory through email and SMS. As and when the registration is granted, the taxable person can log in by temporary password. Applicant can download the registration certificate from GSTN and the post registration business place verification is based on the risk profile provided by GSTN. central and state tax authorities on risk profile. Both central and state tax authorities can see what are the risks suggested by the GSTN, and both the authority can separately make spot verification in order to check that. Then rejected application to be informed about the reasons in writing for refusal or grant of registration through a speaking order, and right to appeal against the decision of the refusal. They can approach the appellate authority against the refusal of the registration application. If the 7 days is provided to the registering authorities or proper officers to verify whether this reply filed is genuine or not. All this raising of queries and filing of reply all are done through online GSTN. So that much time is provided to the rule. Then this is the structure of the GSTN. The first two code are the state codes. This is continue as based on the Indian census 2011. The 32 is the Kerala code. It's continued to be so. And the 10-digit PAN. 10-digit PAN. So 12. Then entity code. The 13th digit is entity code, that is related to number of registrations a business vertical has. Up to 9 if the business vertical have 9 registrations. This will be 9 if the business vertical have 9 registrations. This will be 0 if it is not a business vertical. If it is 2, which means the business vertical have 2 registrations. Only 2, only 1 digit is there. Only 1 digit is there. Then above here 1 to 9, then A to Z, here 26 letters here. 26 plus 9 is equal to 35. If it is B, here it is B, which means the business vertical have 9 plus 2, 11 registrations. 1 to 9, then A to Z. Okay. Then the 4th digit is left blank for future use. Yet nothing is mentioned about it. Then 15th digit is a checklist. It's a random number formed by GSTN. Specific purposes mentioned about it also. A checklist. It's left blank. What the rule says, it is left blank for space, left blank for future use. Not 0. Check digit is a random number generated by the GSTN. Just like in the VAT 32, 01, 02, then 5 numbers, that is changing up. This is just like that. Even if it is same, there is no chance of an identical registration because PAN is different in all cases. This is the structure of GST. Then effective date of registration shall be the date of liability if the applicant file application within 30 days of the liability. If a person files application for registration within 30 days of their liability, then the date of liability will be the date of registration, effectiveness of registration. Then effective date shall be the date on which the registration is granted if the taxpayer doesn't apply for registration within time. If a person doesn't apply for registration even after 30 days of liability, then effective date of registration is the date on which it is granted. Otherwise, if we comply these statutory provisions of the 30 days of liability, the effective date of registration is the date on which he is liable to pay tax. Eligibility for ITC will be debt under section 16. Migrating existing taxpayers to GST. effective date is, I don't know exactly the system, it is system generated, because if a person files an application for registration within 30 days, which means he has liability has arisen even before that. So there will not be any option for automatic date for effectiveness of registration. Here 30 days is the date, it's law. One has to file application for registration within 30 days of liability, it's law. So general rule. Then he is given registration from the date on his liability. If he crosses the threshold limit, you are saying about it is 9 lakhs and the liability is when 10 lakhs.
Yeah, he crosses the threshold for 10 lakhs. So after 10 lakhs, he liable to pay.
Yes.
So then within 30 days of crossing 10 lakhs alone, he needs to take registration.
You are saying about a scenario where a person apply for registration when he crosses 9 lakhs, but his liability comes only 10 lakhs. There are another scenarios where he is liable to take registration irrespective of threshold limit. In order to cover that, a system has to be framed, a law has to be framed in order to cover these areas also. What you said is absolutely correct, because a person has to file application for registration if he crosses 9 lakhs, but his liability is not arised at that time also. Effective date is fixed as a date of issue of grant of registration when the taxpayer does not apply within the time period. On the appointed day, every person registered under any of the earlier law shall be issued RC on a provisional basis. Section 142. This is the transitional provision when all the existing taxpayers,
Without the need for
yes, they have to file an application. They have to file an application within 30 days of it's not finalized which documents are to be uploaded. They have to file an application within 30 days of the appointed day, and the registration is granted provisionally only for 6 months. And validity period may be extended when notified by the government. Such person is required to furnish the prescribed information within the prescribed period. Only provisional registration is granted to the existing taxpayers in the GST regime. They have to file the required details before the proper officer within these 6 months. And if no details are filed within these 6 months, the registration is liable to be cancelled. In that case, there is no further extension of 6 months. This is the suggestion.
Process of the notice and the application fee filed in the office.
Now, certain details are, the application form is yet to be finalized. Certain basic PAN, composition of business, commodity dealt with, nature of transactions, these basic details are to be uploaded in the application.
So that the application is being forwarded to the proper office.
Proper.
But GSTN is the authority handling the registration.
Yes.
Now, under GST, both the center and the state are the proper officer. So GSTN handling the registration. So GSTN handling the registration. Who is then the proper officer?
GSTN is not handling it. It's enabled, it's a software enables the proper officers. Proper officers is the jurisdictional area will be mentioned in the application, and their jurisdictional officers automatically the application will be forwarded to the jurisdictional officers by the GSTN. All jurisdictional officers are mainly based on postal index number. That's why our commissioner is collecting postal index numbers of all the offices in Kerala.
So will there be two registration certificates?
Sorry,
Will there be two registration certificates or single?
only single registration. Only single registration. Both jurisdictional authorities for raising queries, if any. The provisional basis means the existing taxpayers have to file only an application within 30 days.
Permanent registrant will become a temporary registrant.
Registration under GST, and that validity of that number registration is only 6 months, and they have to file or produce the details asked by the proper outfitters within that period. Then only their registration is extended for a further period of 6 months.
State act also that. So what will happen say if we submit it to one authority, it might be transmitted to other. What happens to the other registrations
That automatically disappeared. Yes. Yes. On furnishing prescribed information, this is all provisions related to the existing taxpayers when migrated to GST. On furnishing prescribed information, registration certificate provided on a provisional basis shall be granted on a final basis. On furnishing the prescribed information details before the proper officers. RC issued on provisional basis may be cancelled if such person fails to furnish prescribed information within specified time. The specified time is 6 months. No. No, no, no. Every cancellation of registration is based on show cause notices. Yes. RC issued on provisional basis shall deemed to have not been issued if the said registration is cancelled in pursuance of an application filed by such person that he was now not liable to registration under section 90. Several procedures and name of business, constitution of business, name of the state, principal phase of business, details of promoters, scanned copies of documents.
So could I just raise a ancillary question?
Yes.
During this provisional period of 6 months,
Yes.
the code will not be the GST and whatever code is there. So how will that tax payment at that point of time and subsequent to the issue of the GSTN code, how will they get it?
An application, when the existing dealers file an application for rolling out to GST, all the applicants are given, although all the existing dealers are given the GSTN. So they get the full power as a registered dealer, other new registered dealers. The tax payment, the filing of return, the credit of ITC, all they get as registered dealers. And what's your query?
What I'm asking is the number,
Whether there will be a temporary number or a.
No, 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 it's a permanent number.
but that's based on PAN.
Yes.
The existing, what do you say, provisional thing, whatever registration we have,
Now the existing VAT dealers, for example in Kerala, it is already based on PAN, completely based on PAN. Its PAN is compulsory already in Kerala. GSTN will be generated based on valid PAN. Portal will send GSTN passport respective state authorities. State authorities will communicate the same to taxpayer through email or SMS. They instruct to fill up the remaining data on GST portal. VAT taxable persons include CBEC taxable persons also. Then verification of data. Data so collected will be provided the states for verification. Verification of data by states as per convenience within 2 quarters. If the data is not uploaded in stipulated time, GST will be suspended till taxable person does the needful. At present, large number of existing taxpayers in VAT do not have They are email registered VAT authorities which shall be required to be collected. So, all taxable persons have to furnish their mobile number and email address for getting smooth communication from GSTN. Then amendment in registration is required to inform any changes in the information furnished previously. The authority may approve or reject the application for amendment. The application shall not be required in respect of amendment, certain particulars are prescribed. No rejection for request of amendment without issuing show cause notice. Any rejection or approval of amendments under one act shall be deemed to be the rejection or approval of amendments under both acts, just like registration.
He makes a mistake. He admits that it's a mistake from their part. Whether the FA has to issue
Which mistake?
by amendment.
Amendment.
Whether FA has to issue for
It can be rectified. It can be rectified. If it is as per the request of the dealer, it can be rectified. But here SCN is required only when it is rejected. It is going to be rejected. No. If it is as per the request of the taxable person, no need for giving any SCN. Any change in the data submitted should be entered in the common portal within a stipulated time period. Changes in the following fields requires approval from tax authorities: business entity, state code, PAN, constitution of business, place of business, opting for composition levy, details of proprietor. All these details shall be approved by. This means that some minor details can be amended by the applicant himself. All amendments details will be retained in the database of the GSTN and be made visible to the tax authorities. Surrender or cancellation of registration. Surrendered or cancelled by tax authorities in the following cases: close or fully transfer of business, taxable person excluding voluntary section 19(3) is no longer liable to be registered, change in the constitution of business, amalgamation or demerger of companies. An RC may be cancelled by tax authority from such date including any anterior date in cases where contravention of the provisions of the Act and rules, non-furnishing of returns for 3 consecutive tax periods by compounding taxpayer and for a continuous period of 6 months by other taxpayers. It's very important. The authority, the proper officer can cancel the registration even with an anterior date, even with a prior date, when the taxable person contravenes any of the provisions of the Act and rules. The second, non-furnishing of returns for 3 consecutive tax periods. Tax period is defined in the section 2. Tax period means the period for which returns are to be filed by compounding taxpayer and for a continuous period of 6 months by other regular taxpayers. One cannot file intermittent return in GSTN. Without filing April, he cannot file May. If any serious offences are detected by intelligence wing or other authorities, or if the registration is obtained by fraud or on false fake documents, then the registering authority can cancel with an anterior date. Generally said, it's a contravention of provisions of the Act and rules. Non-commencement of business within 6 months from the date of registration in case of voluntary registration under section 19(3). 19(3) says a person can apply for registration even though he is below the registrable threshold. In that cases, if he is not commence any business within 6 months, the registration can be cancelled. Yes, we can cancel registration. Yes, no, he had not commenced business within 6 months of the date of registration. Remember, he is a person who is not required to registration. Still he apply for registration. He is not required to registration, required to get registration. Sorry? Yes, sir. For the purpose of removing such person unnecessarily entering in GSTN. No, for cancellation of registration, show cause notice has to be issued. Yes. No. If no return is filed for a consecutive period of three return periods, in case of compounding pair, and six return periods in the regular taxpayers, his returns can be cancelled. Registration can be cancelled. Then what's the doubt? Law is clear. There is no option for automatic cancellation. The registration for cancellation of registration, show cause notice has to be given. Yes. That's another question. It may be that has to be clarified. If the return person comes with a reply and returns, normally it is done. It is accepted. There will be some provisos. Cancellation registration with retrospective effect, if obtained by means of fraud, willful misstatement, and suppression of facts. No cancellation of registration without giving SCN, without giving person reasonable opportunity of being heard. Cancellation of RC shall not affect the liability of the person to pay tax or other dues for any period prior to the date of cancellation, whether or not such tax or other dues are determined before or after the date of cancellation. The cancellation of date will not affect the liability of the person. Cancellation of RC under one act shall deem to be the cancellation of registration in both acts, and substantial penalty in case registration obtained with fraudulent intentions and fraudulent documents or declarations. In section 66, 20 penalties are enumerated, and minimum penalty is 10,000, or the tax evaded, an amount equivalent to tax evaded, whichever is higher. This is a penalty provided in section 66. Remember also that under the existing VAT law, penalty under section 67 is not compulsory, it is a discretionary power of the authority. But here the penalty is compulsory. The dealer, the taxable person shall pay a penalty equivalent to the tax evaded. I think in the existing central law, the similar provisions will be there. Such registered person is required. Impact of cancellation of registration. What is the impact of cancellation of registration? An amount equivalent to ITC in respect of inputs held in stock, inputs contained in semi-finished, inputs contained in finished goods held in stock on the day immediately preceding the date of cancellation. The person has to pay the input, the tax on these inputs, which is held as close. Input is defined in section 2. Input means goods other than capital goods. A separate provision is provided for the payment of tax or ITC availed in respect of capital goods. So, when the registration is cancelled, the taxable person has to pay the ITC, corresponding ITC on inputs held as stock on that day, or output tax payable on such goods, whichever is higher, in the prescribed manner, which means the rules are yet to be framed. So, also in the case of capital goods, when the registration is cancelled, the taxable person shall pay an amount equal to ITC taken on such capital goods, reduced by percentage points, or the tax on transaction value of such goods under section 15(1). Section 15(1) says what is transaction value? Transaction value is the actual price paid by the recipient. The value which is the price which is not influenced by the relation between the supplier and the recipient. That says in section 15(1), whichever is higher. In the case of capital goods and also in inputs, the person has to reverse the ITC he claimed on such goods. Inputs means yes. Yes, he is to reverse this also. Yes. Not inputs, ITC in respect of inputs. Input service also. Inputs means no. Yes. Inputs means the book. Definition of input. Input means any goods other than capital goods subject to exemption as we prescribed under this act or the rules made thereunder, used or intended to be used by the supplier for making an outward supply in the course of or furtherance of business. Yes, input means only goods. Only the word inputs are used. No. Only the word inputs is specifically used in the section 21(7) of the draft law, not services. There is no question of any clause in stock in when service is concerned. It is a goods physically available at the business. It's a transfer. But there will be credit in terms of services. There will be credit in terms of services that the law is silent on that point. Shall be calculated 22(7) shall be in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. This is a revocation, the last action. Any registered person may apply for revocation of cancellation within 30 days from the date of service of cancellation order. You have to remember one thing here. If the registration is cancelled by the proper officer on his own motion, there is no revocation. If the registration is cancelled by the proper officer on his own motion, there is no option for revocation of the registration. The registered person may apply for revocation within 30 days of service of the order. The tax authority either revoke the cancellation or reject the application for good and sufficient reasons, and the application shall not be rejected without opportunity. Revocation of cancellation under one act shall deem to be the revocation on both acts. This is the overview. This is the important points we have discussed. Common registration for 3 acts: SGST, IGST and CGST. Registration based on PAN, online application and online registration, submission of scanned copies, one registration for each state, and facility for multiple registration within a state for business verticals, registration within 3 working days, only post registration verification, physical verification, that is also based on the risk provided by GSTN. no security deposit for registration, but advance tax payment for casual taxable person and non-resident taxable person. No separate application for composition for new registration. Separate provisions or procedures for migration to existing taxpayers as provided in section 142. We have 15 minutes to discuss.
Government departments which are not PAN-based entities, how they will be registered?
Government departments have been given. There was a provision for government departments. Allotment of GDI for government departments. There is a special provision for registration. You know, whose PAN will provide? Taxable person, non-resident.
Taxable persons and
Non-resident.
taxable persons. Usually, whenever we have a registration number, only payment can be made. So,
Sorry?
without for any tax
Taxable.
payment has to be made, there should be a registration number. On that registration number only, we will make payment. But in that situation, the payment has to be made to get a registration number. So, how is
Advance tax payment. You mean advance tax payment?
advance tax payment?
I don't know what is the provision or option provided in the GSTN for advance tax payment exactly.
And service not liable to tax. Consist of
Aggregate turnover. You talk about aggregate turnover. Not liable to tax means exempted items. There are two types of exemptions. Exemptions for some set of persons and exemptions for some commodities. That's it. No liability for registration if aggregate turnover consists of goods and services not able to tax. If the commodities are exempted,
if all the commodities are not exempted or the aggregate trade are
no. If all the commodities are exempted, he is not liable to take registration.
reading of this word can it be understood like
Proviso to clause 1 schedule 3.
if aggregate turnover
Provided that the supplier shall not be liable to registration if his aggregate turnover consists of goods and services which are not liable to tax under this act.
consists of goods എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ whether it means certain portion of the goods or
The wording is clear. Only goods and services. That only is not there in the slide. That's the condition. Okay. If the person is dealing exclusively with the items coming under the exempted items, then he is not liable to take registration.
Sir, I have one question that regarding the liability to get registered. If a dealer is having registration in Tamil Nadu, no, not registration, he is having a business of approximately 5 lakhs in a year. He is below the threshold limit and need not be registered in Tamil Nadu. At the same time, he is making some kind of interstate supply, which is exempted from tax. That amounts to approximately 2 lakhs. So the total turnover amounts to 7 lakhs. Normally, he is not liable to get registered, but he is making a transaction interstate. Our clause is that one dealer who is making interstate transaction must be compulsorily registered. So in this context, my question is that the interstate supply is exempted from tax. Do this condition make him forced to take registration?
Here, a person is liable to take registration irrespective of the threshold limit if he is making taxable interstate supply, not exempted. In the set example, a person makes transaction for taxable local transaction for 5 lakhs in Tamil Nadu, and interstate exempted supply for 2 lakhs from Kerala to Tamil Nadu, then he is governed by the threshold limit 9 lakhs, because he is making interstate supply of exempted items, not taxable items. So his aggregate turnover comes only 7 lakhs. So he is not liable to taxation in either of the states. Yes, yes, yes.
Could I just extend that instead of the 2 lakh, you see that exempted interstate sale as 6 lakhs.
6 lakhs. If he extends the another extension of this story. A person in Tamil Nadu makes transaction for taxable local transaction for 5 lakhs. And a person having the same PAN is making interstate supply of exempted item for 6 lakhs. Now the aggregate turnover comes rupees 11 lakhs. So the person in Tamil Nadu is liable to take registration, not in Kerala. In another scenario, if a person in Tamil Nadu makes transaction for taxable local supply for 5 lakhs and taxable local supply for 5 lakhs in Kerala, both of them are liable to take registration. The very basis of this is aggregate turnover comes 10 lakhs.
Another question, sir. The dealers who are opting for compounding, it is said that such kind of registration will not be granted in mid-time. It is to be granted from the beginning of the financial year. So if a dealer happens to begin such kind of a business in September or October, he will have to obtain a registration of one particular kind, and from the beginning of the next financial year onwards, he will have to change
Composition.
to composition. So in the initial years, he will have to go in the style of ITC credit and OPT, IPT, that kind of style. And from the next year onwards, he is having a credit of a huge amount. What will be the fate of such credit?
This is all related to the sessions we are going to discuss in the transitional provisions, the ITC of closing stock, when a person paying tax under section 8 is changing to regular taxpayer and otherwise. These are related to that section. The transitional provision says a person who is switching over from composition scheme to a regular scheme in the next year, he will have ITC credit at his hand, and ITC will be granted for all invoices, I mean for all the goods which are purchased within 12 months. This is the rule. There is a separate session. Sorry, business verticals. I think there is similar provision in the existing service tax. No. Business verticals by means that particular taxable person is known for that commodity, or a similar persons with a common demand for a particular commodity is coming to buy their shop. It may be textiles, pothys. They have textiles in all over South India. If they are under a common PAN, they can get maximum 35 registrations. have to look into deep what was. These business verticals, we have to look into detail what was explained in chartered accountants. Yes, yes. I think more or less similar provisions in central excise or service taxes. No, no, no.
Hello. A business vertical is one SSE who does business in different areas and considers his single business as one division. Say, I will say Wipro. Wipro is in the business of computers.
Yes.
They are in the business of software. They have business of soaps. They have the business of other consumables, Ayurvedic products, many things, bulbs, everything. So, though Wipro is a single SSE, the accounts of computers are not linked and treated along with that of soaps. For them, computer business is a unique business. So, though the SSE is one, they themselves treat their business as separate verticals. That means the base is one and the business is vertically divided. That is the whole meaning of verticals.
It would also have a geographical division.
Maybe. It is from the SSE's point of view whether you treat it as vertical or not.
No, actually it is defined by the chartered accountants standard.
Yes.
Which gives either a business segment or a geographical division, and it is given separately in the financial accounts, final accounts that are given separately as business segment wise reporting. So that is governed by AS 17. So in that case, that 35 will be a problem.
Yes, certainly. So that blank digit has to be used.
The intention behind the definition is